Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So, this jumped right out at me on Yahoo. The US pledges 10.6 billion in aid for Central America, southern Mexico. And this comes right at a time when they have a lot of controversy with a lot of people coming from those particular areas and coming to America for asylum. And there's a few things that I see wrong with this here. So, anyway, without further ado, I'm going to read the article. And so, this is out of AP, which is Associated Press, Mark Stevenson. And so, this right here, you can see it's in the headlines: US pledges billions to Central America, Mexico. And it's in hopes of strengthening their economic development and stemming the tide of migrants from south of the border. The US is giving out 10.6 billion in aid. And so I believe that was the Mexican president that they have now, because they have a new president who was just recently elected. And so Mexico City, out of Associated Press, the U.S. or the United States pledges to give 6.58 in billion in aid and investment. And so there's a video attached to it basically saying what the article is saying. And so you can see it here. It's very short. It basically gives you feedback as to why they're doing this, and they're doing it because those countries are really poor. There's a lot of poverty, but I don't know if anyone had saw that in the news, that the same thing that is happening to these people is really happening here in the US to American people. And so they say the top two cities with the most homelessness is Los Angeles and New York. And you have people who are out on the street and they're in tents and they have nowhere to go because this is all they know. And they're not going to move out of Los Angeles and New York because this is where their jobs are, this is where their families are, this is where they've grown up, this is all they know. And so they are not going to relocate somewhere to a place that they are not familiar with, that they could risk losing the job they do have to go somewhere because the rents seem to be a lot cheaper. The problem with that is when you go to another place, you're pretty much dis like you're disassociated with all of the things that you know and you're familiar with. You're leaving maybe a stable job to go to something that you don't know if it's stable, or if you're for certain that you're going to be employed or you're going to get a job. Even some of these places, I've heard they go like to places thinking that, okay, maybe I'm going to get a stable job, and then they turn to find out that there is no stable job. And even though the rent or the payment in living somewhere else might be lower, it's because there's no real stable jobs and people are on public assistance or they're on some kind of program there, which also again will take like a long waiting list to get on those programs. And so who knows how long that could take. And especially when you've moved away and you've been displaced from a place that you've always known and you always trusted. So all these caravan people and all these people coming here to the US don't realize that there is problems right here with people who are or whom are Americans, where they can barely pay the rent. They don't have any place to go. So do you see this right here, what they're doing, putting babies under the fence, trying to move babies over here. These are the things that I was saying. I would not put my baby through those harsh conditions because, it puts the baby at risk to get killed, to be kidnapped and put out there into sex trafficking. A whole lot of things could wind up happening to these poor children. And so this is crazy because I'm also going to tie this in here. The U.S. pledges 10.6 billion aid to Central America, Southern Mexico for all of their problems. And here we got Americans that right here can't even find a job or can't find a stable place to live in. They claim they're making all of these different avenues for housing for all of these people, but then you don't hear anything about it later. And then as you drive through the downtown of Los Angeles, you see all these tents, you see Skid Row, you see a whole bunch of people who are not even on drugs. They're not even mentally ill. They just can't afford the rents, the high increase in rents. And so I've been saying this, and here they go and turn and take all of this aid money and send it to some other people who are trying to come from over here, and their own government is not helping them. And so this is what people are upset about because they don't understand why America does these things. They kind of turn their back on their own Americans. And so this is what bothers people. So it goes in to say that the U.S. aid aims to promote better security conditions and job opportunities as part of a regional plan to allow Central Americans and Mexicans to remain in their countries and not have to immigrate. What about Americans having security conditions and job opportunities as part so that they can stay in their country and they can stay in their cities and not have to immigrate to other cities where they claim the rents are lower? What's wrong with that picture here? And so the plan was announced in a joint US. Okay, so Mexican statement released by the State Department and read aloud by Mexican Foreign Relations Secretary Marcelo Ebrard in the Mexican capital. So in some, I think this is good news, and it may be well and good news for the Mexican government. But how do we know that that money is going to be allocated to where it needs to be? The other thing is I don't know that some of these veterans, these American veterans that are homeless, some of the people that are regular families here that are homeless, and they can't even find a place to pay decent rent that is not overpriced. What do people here in the States feel about this? And so that is my thing right there. So, newly inaugurated President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador waxed poetic about the plan to provide jobs so people won't have to immigrate. Wow. So they're worried about a country and worried about people coming here. And the people that are already here that are born Americans have no place to stay, or they're barely paying their rent, or they're living paycheck to paycheck and they can barely make it. Wow. So it says, I have a dream that I want to see become a reality, that nobody will want to go to work in the U.S. anymore. Lopez Obrador said at a morning news conference before the announcement. Okay, so my question is many people here in America know that slogan from Martin Luther King, that he had a dream, and we still are falling behind here in the US, in our country, with helping Black people. We wouldn't give reparations to Black people for all of the racial overtones and the racial struggle that Black people have had for many centuries. What about economic development for Black communities? There is none. There hasn't been none. And so whenever somebody tries to speak out on those issues, they're silenced, they're jailed, they're ridiculed, they're belittled, they're told that, oh, we've moved past that or we've evolved, basically ignored. And so here you got people, this is goes back to what I was saying, that you have people coming from these other places and they virtually turn their backs on Americans that have been here all their life, born, raised, and been citizens for many centuries, maybe the oldest people here. And so they can't even get help with living, with cost of living. And so that's what's sad about this whole thing. And so you're helping other people, but not helping the people that are needing help, that are right here on American soil, or you're slow to do it. And so it goes on to say, in some, I think that this is good, he claims. This is coming from this Mexican government, which gives me the way to a wherewithal to say, what is going on with that government over there that they won't help their own people? What is going on? What are they doing with their monies that they accumulate? What are they doing? And so it says this president, his name is Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador. Okay, so he claims that he has a dream to see become a reality, that nobody will want to go to work in the U.S. anymore. And Lopez Obrador said at a morning news conference before the announcement, the combination of public and private investment for the stay-at-home effort doesn't require congressional approval, unlike Trump's signature project to stem illegal immigration, a border wall. Okay, so the U.S. is the other thing. If you're going to do a border wall, how are you going to give the very country that you claim you're doing the border wall for, and then you give money for them to have aid over there, but yet you also demand money for a border wall? How does that work? So the U.S. State Department issued a simultaneous statement saying that the U.S. is coming, or they're committing 5.8 billion through public and private investment to promote institutional reforms and development in the Northern Triangle. So, a term that refers to Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador. So, they're giving money to all of these different countries. What about Africa, who's had long problems in their countries? And then you have other groups that are coming there basically trying to take away, or trying to get them to get a loan for their country so they can put them in poverty. China has done that. Um, so that is crazy. It just sounds, really backwards. So it goes on to say that Lopez Obrador's administration has said it is also interested in agriculture and forestry and tourism projects in southern Mexico, and the U.S. said it will contribute to those efforts. Okay, why don't you contribute to Black people who are trying to have a place to live, or trying to get into home buying market, or trying to get a loan, or trying to go to better colleges, and funding money for a project so that Black kids can have better futures? You notice they have no interest in helping people that are Black. And so, and they have no interest in helping people that have been here, that have been citizens in the US, and that are outdoors on the street till this day. You can see people, if you drive downtown, who are under tents and they have no place to go because they've been overpriced out of their apartments. They can't even pay rent anymore. And so this, I feel, is something wrong with this. And so it goes on to say that the U.S. Overseas Private Investment Corporation is prepared to invest and mobilize billion in additional funds for projects on the southern border of Mexico. In southern Mexico, that is, not even the border, but that are viable and attract private sector investment, according to the statement. So this amount is in addition to the 2.8. So it's adding on more billions of dollars. 2.8 billion in the projects for Mexico through what is called OPEX, Current Investment Pipeline. Ebrard said that the commitments established here signify more than doubling foreign investment in the southern Mexico starting in 2019. This project's going to take place. So southern states like Chiapas and Oaxaca are home to many of Mexico's poorest communities. Now, Oaxaca has Black Mexicans. And so I've known this for quite some time, and you'll see some video on it. But those are the poor areas. Even in Mexico, Black Mexicans are treated even worse in poverty. It's sad. And so they've pretty much turned their backs on people that are of color in these countries. And so that's why I pose the question, like, what is this government doing to their own people to help them? Have they just totally distanced themselves from reality? Or are they just pretty much um, using these people so that they can get more money because they've done things with their money and they hadn't used it the right way to allocate it to people who need it in their countries? And so whatever tactic they used to so that these people felt as though they had to flee the countries in massive numbers, it worked because now they're going to get 2.8 billion, 10 point whatever billion, and all this money is going to be allocated to this country. Now let's see what they do with it. Now, even if they do the right things with this money, is it going to help all of the people? Are there going to be people that are going to stay in that country? Because what I was hearing, there was so much violence. And isn't that why some of the people claim that they were fleeing because they were trying to get away from all of the violence? So, is that going to strengthen their police enforcement in those countries so that they can get control of the violence and the cartels? I don't know that that's going to happen because, you know, as much as you'd like to think that it's just a criminal element and that the government's not involved, there has to be some kind of involvement where there's inside people that are part of government that are also benefiting from some of the the criminal element because it comes with drugs and money. And so maybe that's the reason why people had enough and they had left because they were afraid, because they felt as though, and from what I seen in previous videos, that they said that some reporters couldn't even go over there to report the violence and some of the mayhem in these countries because it was so brutally violent and it was so dangerous over there that some of the reporters, their lives had been threatened just to even make a report about anything having to do with the cartel or the government being corrupt in these countries. So now the US is offering to just shell out all this money to these people. How do you know that they're really going to use the money for what it's intended? And so you have people, once again, I'm going to say that people here in the US are struggling. You have people living in tents, people living out of motels and RVs here in the US. There are Black people that, can't even get employed anywhere. There's some Black people who are employed and they don't have any room for career advancement. You can have degrees. They treat you as if you have a high school diploma or less. and you can't pay the rents because the rents are overpriced or high priced rents. And so they make it hard for you to live as an American citizen. You have veterans here who have fought for this country and almost practically died, maybe lost a limb or two, and they're on the street under tents with no place to go. Yet you have the US government who is concerned about all of these other countries that are not US countries, Central America, and wants to pledge 10.6 billion in aid to all of these countries because we don't know if their government is supporting them. Does that make sense? No, it doesn't. And so these countries that are even poorer are some of the countries where they have Black people that are from those countries and they treated them horrible. And so here's the thing, it says the southern states like Chiapas and Oaxaca are home to many of Mexico's poorest communities. Lopez Obrador, who took office December the 1st, has sought to make development in that region a priority, including plans for a Mayan train stretching from touristy parts of the Yucatan Peninsula down Chiapas. It was unclear if Mexico would give anything in return. A planned announcement about Mexico's migration policy was postponed until Wednesday. And so the U.S. has reportedly wanted Mexico to allow migrants seeking asylum in the U.S. to remain in Mexico while their applications are being processed. So this is all in an effort to keep people in the country so that they won't come here fleeing for asylum. Because why? Because we have our own problems right here in America where Americans are in overpriced apartments, can't find places to live. There's poverty and hunger on the street. You have children right here in America. There are Black children that don't have anything to eat and can't even get any housing. There are regular people who have all their lives have tried to get reparation and can't because of their color, their skin color. So it goes on to say the U.S. has reportedly wanted Mexico to allow migrants seeking asylum in the U.S. to remain in Mexico while their applications are being processed. So Ebrard had previously suggested that about 25 billion in money and dollars in the U.S. investment would be an appropriate figure for what Mexicans and Central Americans have dubbed the Alliance for Prosperity in the region. And so there's some reactions, and I'm sure that it may not necessarily be good reactions. So the U.S. Overseas Private Investment Corporation is prepared to invest and mobilize $2 billion in additional funds for projects in southern Mexico that are viable to attract private sector investment, according to the statement. This amount is in addition to a $2.8 billion in projects for Mexico through OPEC's current investment pipeline. Translation, more jobs will be outsourced to these countries. And so that's correct. There is going to be more jobs that are going to be put in these countries and more opportunities. So you're turning your backs on Americans, is what it looks like. And so they claim that they're reducing illegal immigration, but this could be very problematic giving all this money to these countries. And you got US here where United States citizens, this is what someone put. How much money are those countries willing to give us to help our citizens who are struggling or in need? That's what I was saying. I don't understand why they would give all of this money. It just doesn't make any sense when we have if you look at San Francisco and see the people that are on the street that have no place to go, they're homeless. Literally, you could see people taking a dump in the middle of the street. And this is the US. This is really sad, and it feels like a slap in the face. And here you got, and I'm going to mention this, and I'm not afraid to say this, you got Black people who they can't even get treated decent on a job because of their skin color, and there's always somebody dancing around the issue of racism, and they always want to throw that little line out, oh, you're pulling out the race card. But it's true. You have Black people who don't get reparations. They give white people reparations because they're Jewish. They get reparations. You know, they threaten Black people. They say, well, if you can't dig up all of the survivors that experienced Jim Crow and experienced racism, and you have proof of that, then we have no knowledge that you all experienced that, and we can't give you reparations. Well, you did a lot of stuff to make people's lives a living hell, and a lot of those people were separated from their families as well. So naturally, if they've been displaced and separated from their families from centuries ago, how do you expect people to dig up all of those things that happened? They know they have family members that experienced it. They may not be able to produce paperwork, but it has happened. We're the generation that had family members that experienced that horrible event, and now we're paying for it because we're in a country that doesn't recognize us, that doesn't care about us, that doesn't give us any reparations, that doesn't give us opportunities. And when we do get opportunities and when we work these jobs, we're treated lesser than the others. And so they put other people in positions of power that look or appear to be white or appear to have some type of status in this country. They could be coming from another country, like I said, and they come here, they get opportunities, they get money, they get housing, and then we are looked at here as, oh, well, you got to do it on your own. And if you try to go and apply for public assistance, you've got all this paper you got to fill out, and if you make one mistake, they're looking at you like you did something wrong, or you're trying to steal from the government. And so I'm saying this because this is very upsetting. Because to see this right here, and they do all this talking about how they're going to make this wall and they're going to do all it is a floor show. It's a complete floor show. And they're not telling you, out of what you're looking at here, that they're giving money to these countries, lots of money, billions in fact. They're not only giving the 10.6 billion, but they're also giving additional funds for aid investment, for tourism, and all of this. And they're going to give them jobs. Sounds like stuff they should be giving Americans, stuff they should be giving people who are in those tents in downtown Los Angeles. But no, they want to give it to these countries where they see this production of a show of all these people coming here because somewhere along the line their government had turned their back or aren't doing the right thing. So now it's the US, it's up to the US to help people from somewhere else. And then they turn around. If you ask them for any little monies here, they want to cut you off your aid. They want to cut you off your healthcare programs. They want to question you to death of why you're using your money for whatever you're using it for. They want to know who's in your house. They want to know where you got this money from and where you got that money from. And then as soon as you get a little bit of income, they want to cut you off this program and cut you off that program. And so they don't tell the people that how they treat Americans here that have always been here. And so I personally feel that this is wrong. This is wrong. And the money they should be sending somewhere should not be sent anywhere. It should be coming. It should be filtering down to the Americans that are already here, that are struggling and living paycheck to paycheck. How do you feel about this? Anyway, I'm going to let this video go. Like, comment, subscribe, and thanks for listening.